voice is ready to evolve and be heard in a loud society where people feel they have limited choices. We hope to open minds and inspire people. That being said, enjoy the sequel. Tito, and welcome to another episode of Maintain Design. Today we are joined by Isaac from the Hidden in the Shadows podcast. Isaac, how are you doing?
I'm doing good.
How are things in the US?
Sketchy at best, I guess, right now.
Yeah, politically.
Yeah, but as of weather-wise, I'm melting in the sun. But
Yeah.
That's just on the East Coast.
Yeah, we basically experiencing this thing called load shedding. So basically, we're experiencing like rolling blackouts. So
that sucks.
yeah, we don't have power for about 2 times, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day.
Parts of America is like that, especially with Texas.
Yeah, really? Does that happen over there?
Texas has its own power grid,
Yeah,
independent from the rest of the United States. So when they don't have enough supply and demand, they have to shut off areas and stuff like that. It's happened when we had that big freeze that went up to the center of the United States and froze all of Texas.
yeah.
I'm originally from Texas, where I used to live. Right now, I reside in North Carolina. But no, I remember my mom was telling me about that. Like they didn't have power for like a week when it was like 20 degrees outside.
Crazy. But
So
yeah,
what is
man.
that in Celsius?
Yeah. So yeah, Isaac, tell me, man. With regards to the podcast that you run with Megan, can you take me back to the beginning? How did you guys start this podcast, and what inspired you guys to start this podcast and start speaking about paranormal activity?
Well, we both have been surrounded by the paranormal ever since we were kids. I mean, her being psychic and having spirits consistently come to her. Every house she's ever lived in has been haunted. I grew up in a ranch in Texas that I still have yet to figure out the mystery of why so much paranormal activity happened there. Everything from seeing spirits, from having voices call, from hearing things in the woods, from a possible cryptoid I encountered when I was young, to even seeing alien lights in the sky. I think my ranch experienced everything under the sun, but I was always surrounded by the paranormal my entire life. And then when I finally met Megan in my early 20s, she thought her place always being haunted would scare me away. But I told her, no, you found the guy who's really into the paranormal and actually likes this stuff. So like I would work overnight, and of course she didn't. She worked during the day, and I would go over at her place at night and just spend a night with her. I'd be awake just watching TV while she would sleep. She just liked me there. So we kind of had that relationship for like a good year or so.
Yeah.
Until I got finally started working during the day. But no, I would spend nights over at her place, and I experienced everything at her place, from being grabbed underneath the bed, from being scratched, from seeing her doorknob rattle like someone was inside when there's no one there, from hearing her name clearly called down the hall, and seeing a girl like in a white dress and long hair peek herself around the corner down the hall trying to look at me.
That's crazy. That is crazy. And do you think that when it comes to these type of things, when it comes to the spiritual realm, do you think that these type of things present themselves to specific people, or do you think other people may not be exposed to it or encounter these things because maybe they're not at a certain spiritual place or a certain level of consciousness? What do you think it is that puts people like yourself, for example, in the position to see these things and be exposed to these things?
Well, I mean, we're always surrounded by it all the time. It's not something that you have to open yourself up to. Granted, having an open mind towards it makes it more acceptable to what's happening to you in some certain cases. But a lot of people try to rationalize paranormal things that happen to them just so they don't have to experience it. Because believe me, fully accepting the idea that there is stuff outside our reality is hard for people to grasp, and it starts breaking the reality. And a lot of people want to be ignorant to it because they don't want to accept that it's actually real. But Megan's been psychic her whole life, and being psychic, yeah, that kind of helps because that usually gives like, I guess, a big, flare in the sky radar thing to any spirits in the area that, hey, this person can hear me. I can communicate with this person. Me, something's all my ranch. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't never done enough research of why my ranch that I lived on with, I don't know acreage wise. I want to say maybe 20 acres. It was pretty big. I want to say like best way I think is like 200 yards in width and about 400 yards in length is the best way I can describe it. And I'm using American metrics, so
Yeah.
differentiate, I guess, how you would do it. But it was pretty big, and my grandfather bought it back in the early '60s when he finally moved to America from Mexico. Um, so I couldn't tell you what that piece of land had attached to it over time, but a lot of people ignored a lot of paranormal things that happened there. But for some reason, I was always front and center for anything that happened. But that was always our case. Is I was always surrounded by it because I could never escape encountering people who always told me stories or me sharing my stories with them. Megan, in her situation, because she was psychic, but most people, they either have to go to somewhere that's haunted or they move into a place that becomes haunted, or they make the mistake of playing around with things in the paranormal, like say a Ouija board or any other form like that, and then they invite those things into their home, and they're not always good. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Ouija board. It's just the act of doing it. You can make your own Ouija board at home, and it's just that act of what you're doing. You're trying to communicate with the other side, and you're basically calling things in. And without proper protection, or at least a way to close it, what comes will most likely stay because you're inviting it in. But the average person, I mean, you might have a paranormal encounter at some place in time uh, that will cause something to happen. Any areas that have any death or instant death, like hospitals or insane asylums, stuff like that, or violent death, or even death caused by depression and sadness, usually those spirits like to stay there. In situations like that. But that's what we learn to find. And sometimes spirits have unfinished business. They want to stay behind because they have something to do. They need something done before they feel they can cross over.
Yeah. And over the years, how would you say one can identify the difference between a good and a bad spirit? Because I'm assuming that not all spirits are evil spirits.
It's how the spirit communicates or reacts to you. And because not only is we, or me and my wife, are podcasters, we are also paranormal investigators. So we do that as well, go into locations and stuff like that. And after I tell you what I can do, I'm gonna blow your mind because not a lot of people have heard what I can do and what it's not a common psychic ability. Let's say that, but I'll get to that in a minute. Um, from testing the differentiation from good and bad spirits, it's um, how a spirit reacts to you. So most time, a friendly spirit or a human spirit, essentially a good person, wants to communicate. So they'll move something. They'll try to get your attention. They'll try to communicate by flickering lights. Nothing seeming too violent. Like they're not trying to scare you. They're not trying to hurt you. They're just trying to communicate. But evil spirits, people even who say were a-holes in life and are still a-holes in death, tend to be evil spirits on the other side, just evil human spirits. And they're mostly seeking violence. They want to torment people. They want to hurt them. They want to scare them. They want to make you feel fear. And then you got creatures like demons, essentially, that all they want to do is cause pain and suffering to anybody, or dead or alive, within their vicinity. But we've learned to differentiate from how a place is haunted from what kind of spirits you're communicating with. But my ability allows me to differentiate without even knowing pre-knowledge of what is there. To explain, I have the ability to feel the energy of the dead in my hands. And the sensation feels like when your hand goes to sleep, that staticky sensation that feels it goes to your palm. Now, the sensation starts in the center of my palm and spreads the closer I am to the entity or how strong it is. And I've learned to differentiate through, of course, practice and time. And of course, my wife being psychic, her helping me out, is that my left hand, when it charges, is what I call the sensation. When it charges, that tells me it's a human spirit, a good spirit, someone on the light side of the spectrum of the paranormal. But when my right hand charges, that's something dark, something evil. Um, but that's only one part of many parts of my ability. I can also pull this energy into myself, kind of like ripping that energy off the plane, um, and then that energy essentially goes into me, and I filter it to later become neutral energy. Kind of, I express it in a breath. And most people always say like the Green Mile. Have you ever seen that film? I said not exactly, but the sensation and the emotion is kind of the same. Not seeing black flies fly out of my mouth though, but it does come out of me like a breath. But that started taking a toll on me. My actually, you can't really see it in camera, and anyone listening, they can't see either. But I actually have whitening in my mustache and beard on the right side of my face. The because everything I pull is dark. I never try to pull any light people because I just feel like you're tearing someone out of their home. So everything I take that's evil. I pull evil spirits off the plane, and that started taking a toll on my right side of my face for whatever reason. I don't know how, but one of the other psychics on my team, Mike, who's a little more seasoned with paranormal investigating, uh, had the idea to see if I could put the energy I pull into an object, essentially creating a haunted object, but something I could put all this energy in. And he got the vision of King Solomon's ring, the King Solomon symbol, to be specific. I don't know if you know anything about King Solomon, the story of it, what his ring represents.
Not necessarily what his ring represents. Can you elaborate on that?
Uh, he has been represented in three faiths: Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. But they all tell the story from three point of views. But the story is still the same. King Solomon, in Christianity and Judaism, say that he imprisoned 72 demons in his ring. Islamic faith says that it was jinn. So, but the translation of them jinn being demons, it's a whole debate. But essentially, that's what he did. He imprisoned 72 demons in his ring, and he used those demons to build his temple. So that idea of if I can imprison energy that I pull into an object, and I actually bought a replica of King Solomon's ring, this one, that I have imprisoned. Well, I've lost count of how many entities that I've put in that ring. And yes, they or no, they can't get out. And yes, you can hear it if you're a psychic person. My wife says when she's near it, it sounds like screaming, snarling, swearing. Another psychic on our team, Mike, he says it sounds like a prison, like a lot of people yelling at once. Other psychics who I've met have been around it. They say they feel immense amount of evil energy coming from it, and they can hear people yelling and like swearing at me and stuff like that. But no, that it's a way that I can permanently take something dark off the plane and put it somewhere that it can't escape. And so far, nothing has been able to escape that ring. And I know for sure, there might be more, but I know for sure there's at least two demons in that ring.
Yeah. So have you ever thought about or prepared yourself for the event that does happen? That those energies do get released or those energies do escape from that ring?
It would have to be taken from me and put into possession of someone who knows how to allow them to escape. My wife, she says the last time, the only time she's ever looked into it or channeled into the ring, she said it looked like to her like a snow globe essentially, and all these spirits were like floating around in there. Like she said, she reminded her of Dementors, kind of like from Harry Potter.
Yeah.
How they like they just look like shadow figures, but they're slamming against the glass, and it's not even making it like a slight scratch to the glass. She says there's like a grate at the bottom, like a sewer grate, but it's only allowing stuff to come in, and nothing's allowed to leave. She says whatever I did, the original time I pulled something into that ring, they can't escape from it. So I don't know if it's the symbol itself that's imprisoning these things and not allowing them to leave, or there's something else at play that's a part of my ability that I don't fully understand yet. That when I put something in an object, it stays. I mean, I've theorized about what it could possibly be, whether it's the ring or could I do this with any object. I haven't really practiced at trying to put it in something else because I don't want to create haunted objects. I kind of want to stop them. So, I mean, that's a head scratcher to think: is it the ring that's keeping them in, or is it me that's keeping them in the ring? I don't know. I couldn't answer that. But no, nothing has been able to leave. And when it comes to dark entities that I've encountered in my time as a paranormal investigator for the last 2 years now, nothing, and I say this not as cocky or arrogant or with ego. I just say this as a matter of fact. Nothing has been able to stop me. Everything I've come across, from a actual demon to regular dark entities that I encounter at different locations, every time I've started to pull, it's over. It's nothing's been able to fight back, to stop me, to run away. As soon as I start pulling, then that's it. And the pull, in the middle of me doing so, maybe 5-6 seconds before I have it, and then it's in the ring, and then it's over.
Yeah. And let me ask you a question. You say nothing's been able to stop you. Is that because you're relying on another source of energy to prevent that? Or how does that work? So what has been your deterrent, basically?
I know this stuff when you're hearing me talk about is blowing your mind. It's like
It
where
is.
it's not something commonly heard. And believe me, when this first, I didn't have this my entire life. I've only this ability was awoken in me in September of 2020. So I've only had this ability for like 2 years, and
Yeah.
I'm still learning the full grasp of what it does. And I talked to a psychic in Australia. Her name is Peta, and she has her own paranormal team over there and stuff like that. But she had a friend who's a psychic as well named Jane. And when I described my ability to her, she said it sounds exactly like her friend Jane. Luckily, her friend Jane was at her house that evening. So I talked to Jane for a little bit, and she says, "Oh, I know exactly what you're doing. I have a similar ability." Jane is almost the opposite though. She pulls light energy, basically people. She pull the energy into herself and then transfer it to the other side. She's like she crosses them over. She says she never deals with anything dark. She only deals with things of light. Uh, whether the dark scares her or she can't, she never explained. But she said the term that she learned of what our ability is, because she says it's so rare, there's barely information. And believe me, I researched this. I tried to find some history of anybody who can do this kind of stuff, and there's barely, well, there's nothing. I mean, you can look up stuff on mediumship, remote viewing, all of the forms of psychic abilities you've ever heard of. There's tons of information, but this, nothing. And she said that when she went to her shaman said it's a rare ability. It's not like one in like a million, but it is rare enough that there's not information on it. But the term that she came up with was psychopomp or shadow walker, which gave us the term Shadow Walker Paranormal, which is the name of my paranormal team. Because I became the Shadow Walker in a sense like that. That's is what my original title was. That's what I called it. That I couldn't tell anyone I was a psychic, I was a medium, I was this, I was that, because I don't have psychic abilities. I can't hear the dead. I can't talk to them. I can't see them other than what you could see as well if they're like right in front of you. But as of any psychic abilities, no, I don't have any of that. All I can do is this with my hands. And granted, it's been extremely helpful in investigations dealing with stuff that's very dark and it could be dangerous. But no, Shadow Walker is the only terminology she came up with, and that's what that's what I used. I told people I'm a Shadow Walker, I guess. But me and my wife started meeting more people who could do things that could manipulate energy around them. We met another woman in Seattle. Her name is Charisse. She pushes light energy, positive energy out of her left hand and kind of pushes back anything dark that would harm her or anyone she's around. And then, of course, my wife has learned, amongst all her psychic abilities, to push energy, positive energy, out of herself, kind of creating, let's say, a force field, but like basically a blockade of anything that comes running at her. And then Mike, also psychic on our team, he kind of does the same thing, but he emits it from his entire body. It's not directed in any certain way. It's almost like a positive energy EMP that he sets off from himself. And we started calling these energy manipulation abilities. And I'm assuming there's a lot more people out there that have energy manipulation abilities, or EMAs as we call them, because this seems to be something that's been happening. And what separates me from all the other EMA users that we found is that they're all psychics with this extra ability, as versus me, this is all I can do. But EMA users, or EMAs is I guess something we coined, but it makes sense to what is discussed here: manipulating the energy around you of the dead, essentially.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what that. But the story gets deeper. I had surgery about a couple months ago, hernia surgery on my stomach.
Yeah.
And Mike, who's on our team, he's had many surgeries over his time. He's had cancer, he's had stomach problems, he has hernias, he had a lot of problems, health problems, but he's all good now. He's cancer free and all that. But his every surgery that he's gone under, he's been under anesthesia for like a long period of time. And what he learned is to meditate as he's under anesthesia. And what he's learned is that doing so, you can go way out there and like the called, I'll say the ether, or the fourth or fifth dimension, but speak to spirit guides, getting answers from other things. This information he comes back with is astounding. So he told me, when you get under, because I had to be under anesthesia, he said, when you do that, meditate, focus, and try to get an answer of your ability. Maybe speak to your spirit guides. Maybe, try to talk to somebody like that. And I was like, okay. What was strange is that the person I met in the meditative state of being under anesthesia was my grandfather, but not this life's grandfather. I had a past life where I was apparently a Cheyenne native in the Cheyenne tribes. That grandfather from that time met me in this time to tell me what I am. And he looked like a Cheyenne native. We were around a blue fire pit and we were sitting on logs, like around a fire, just talking. But all I remember, other than seeing him and him explaining who he is, what he said to me. And what he said to me is that you are Ashwalakanta, the Reaper of Souls. And that's all I remember from the conversation after that. He says, you are Ashwalakanta, the Reaper of Souls. And then I remember waking up and I was back in the patient room and I was like, what the heck? And I was telling my wife that. I tried looking up that word and I can't find it. What my best guess is that this name, this title, Ashwalakanta, is so kept secret within the native tribe that they don't share it. And believe me, there's a lot of stuff they haven't shared with anyone outside the tribe altogether. But I believe this is a story within the Cheyenne tribe that's kept secret because they don't want the white man to know, or it's just something that's been passed down through time that only like the elders or even medicine men know. So it's one of my side missions in life to find someone who speaks Algonquin, or at least Cheyenne Algonquin, to figure out what it means. Because I don't know if he was saying to me like it was a name or a title. But it has to do something with my ability, because that's the whole reason I was trying to meet someone in that meditative state, was trying to find what my ability is and what the full length of it is. But no, that's all I got on that part. So my ability, someone has ties to Native American histories. I know that at least for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you speak about ability there. How do you basically, I don't want to say learn, but how do you adapt to that ability? Because obviously it's one thing to encounter spirits around you, right? Whether that's good or bad, but it's another thing to tap into certain spiritual abilities. So how would you say you adapted and learned how to utilize those abilities that you speak of?
A lot of trial and error, figuring out what hand does what. And then, of course, my wife being psychic helped because she said, I said, "Oh, what is this? My left hand's charging." She said, "Oh, it's a person. Someone's there trying to talk to us." And then when my right hand charges and I'm trying to feel around a room, she says, "Oh, something dark, something evil. I don't like what's over there." So, and
Mhm.
then our friend Mike, who's the psychic part of our team, the older guy, his abilities are very shamanistic, is a way I can call him. Like his psychic abilities are very like he taps in his spirit guides. His spirit guides give him answers to questions that need to be answered. So he kind of helped guide my ability, or at least how he didn't have any knowledge of my ability, but he guided me the same way he would guide any other psychic that he met that needed teaching and learning to harness and control their ability. So he kind of gave me the same steps to do so. But of course, he said, I have no knowledge of how your ability works and stuff like that. It's up to you, but I can give you the same steps I would give anybody. Um, so through meditation, um, tapping into communicating with my spirit guides, getting answers from them, they helped out a lot. Uh, and just yeah, meditation is probably the best answer I always give anyone of how I learned to, I don't know, master my ability to have more control over it. Um, and imagination, I guess. If you can visually see what you're trying to do, that does help out a lot with focusing how I see my ability. And that also helped me learn to give the textured feeling of the sensation of different dark entities that I pull. And I learned to differentiate them from smoke and sand. Smoke, when I pull the energy, how it feels like smoke. Smoke is, you can still feel it, but it's still air. Like it's not anything tangible. You can put your hand through smoke, you kind of feel it, but it's essentially smoke. Sand, obviously, it's very coarse, very hard, it has weight. And of course, but you can still run your fingers through it almost like water. But that's, I always give when I tell someone the strength of the entity that I pulled is smoke and sand. Sand level entities are very strong, very powerful, very old, and do cause me actual physical pain when I pull them. Smoke entities, nah, that's just your average, you know, uh, you know, human spirit who's evil on the other side and to still are still evil. But sand level entities, I think I've encountered maybe six in my entire time that have been that hard to pull. And I always felt like after the pull, my entire forearm and even my bicep feels like muscles are strained. Like I've been doing like 1,000 curls with a weight, and it's just like that over exhaustion of just putting my hand out straight in front of me and pulling with, or trying to pull something that you can't tangibly feel. But I don't know, my after a sandable entity, that's what my hand feels like. My entire arm, it just feels like overworn. Um, but yeah, that's the best answer I usually give people, like how I learned to even get as good as I am now with my ability so far. And through meditation, I actually learned another part of my ability, at least what I can do with it, is if I put my hand to the earth, I can pull from the ground. And when I pull from the ground, I pull everything dark in the radius as much as my mind's eye can see. Is
Yeah.
best way I describe it to somebody. When I put my hand to the earth, I kind of make a connection, and then I can see in my mind's eye, as they say, the entire area, and then that allows me to pull an entire area of dark entities all to one single point where I can pull them out of the ground at one time. Um, and that's what we usually save at the end of an investigation. Like we try to go around, get answers, and then after I do that final pull from the ground, um, it's over. Like the entire area is cleared out. And the to I guess tell you uh, how wide of a space I've done so far. I have pulled an entire building. I have pulled an entire farm. I pulled almost an entire block uh, of an area of space. A lot of places. If I concentrate hard enough, I can, see the expand of the entire area. And a lot of times, the energy when I pull from the ground has different shapes. It almost feels like sometimes like I would pull like a cylinder out of the ground or like a rectangle box from out of the ground. One time at a place that supposedly had a demon attached to it, it felt like I was pulling like muck, like black stringy, stretchy, like sewage liquid out of the ground, and it felt like you know, it felt like pulling out like a wet sock out of a toilet. That's what it kind of felt like, that like stretchy black thickness, like pulling out of the ground. But that was only one case. Most of the time, the energy has a shape that I pull from the ground, which is strange. But that's another aspect of what I can do when it comes to clearing entire